Anything said on this show represents opinions only and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice. Welcome to Finances the Other F Word, a podcast about the money behind current events where we do the research so you won't have to. Here is your host, Mello, certified financial planner and author of Finances the Other F Word. Catch Mello live on the Station Head app Wednesday mornings at 6 a.m. Pacific Time via the handle @MomentOfMetal. Listener discretion is advised.
For everyone joining me now and who will be joining me. This is a very short show today. Good morning to Finances, the Other F Word listeners. So there has been a lot of things that I have been covering lately that are very pressing. And unfortunately, when things are pressing, that usually means that they're really not good news, because there's something that we need to be aware of, or something that needs to be on our radar, or something that we need to know what's happening. And I found that I am Trump fatigued. Being in my job where I can't really not follow what the administration is doing, because what they're doing is affecting policy, and policy is affecting the economy, and the economy is going to affect the stock market and vice versa. And certain policies affect certain sectors, and certain tariffs affect certain sectors. And so what I find out is I find myself being absorbed in the news so much that it gets me extremely negative. So I wanted to have a really positive 30-minute show, super light, nothing major today. Talk about a couple different strategies that you can deploy when you're trying to save. And then I had a question from someone who DM'd me on Finances, the Other F Word, through Instagram. And I will encourage the listeners of this show, whether you listen to me live on Station Head or you listen to me through Finances, the Other F Word podcast, that if you have questions, please reach out to me. I am more than happy to share my knowledge with you. I will keep you anonymous, but I will get the questions answered. Just so you know, I cannot give you advice as far as like, hey, Mel, I'm looking at putting this investment in my portfolio. What do you think? That's not something I can do. I can't give you advice like that. But what I can do is share my knowledge with you to give you things to consider when you're making a decision. And so this is a really light episode. I have been rereading Man's Search for Meaning. If any of you have never heard of that book, it's written by Frankl. Why can't I remember? Is it Viktor E. Frankl, I think, but the last name is Frankl. And it is about a gentleman who is a Holocaust survivor. And he was in Dachau, and he was also in Auschwitz for 3 years between the two camps. And he was actually liberated. He made it out, obviously, because he read the book. I believe he lost his wife in Auschwitz to the gas chamber. But he is a psychologist by trade before he became a Holocaust survivor. And he talks a lot about trying to have a positive outlook in the most pressing circumstances. And even though for my dudes and gals out there who might be feeling oppressed by a lot of the stuff that's going on financially right now, as well as just life being life, it's a good book to read, and that it kind of spurred this show today. So what I'm going to do is I have a listener question I'm going to address at the end of it. And then I am going to just talk about a couple very, uplifting, non-threatening things. Like I said, this is a more positive show, just trying to cleanse the palate from all the negativity that unfortunately I usually have to cover, because that's what is mostly happening financially, is negative stuff. And so we have a lot of concern with the Gen Z generation and Gen Alpha generation, and even the youngest of our millennial wave that since they've solidly grown up with social media, that there is a loss of communication between everyone, and that social media has now taken over that place that normally would be, represented by, by human interaction with people. So I don't know what's happening to my voice this morning, so I apologize for that. So there was a Bank of America survey featured in the On the Monday newsletter that reports over 50% of Gen Z men, so these are your kids, this is aged 18 to 28, or if they're younger than that, they're Gen Alpha, spend $0 on dating, while among the ones who said that they do spend, 25% of men and 30% of women keep it under $100 a month. And so what we're seeing is, from all of the things that I talk about all the time, is we're seeing that there is a slow trend building where people are moving towards hey, instead of us going out to eat, why don't you come over and let's make a lasagna, or let's do something that's inexpensive, and let's not spend a lot of money on dating, which is actually very positive in the fact that it is reconnecting the generations that will be the ones who will be ultimately taking care of the millennials and the very youngest of the Gen X's. And I thought that was a nice, refreshing twist, because we hear often that, the communication skills are not good anymore in school. And if you talk to the teachers, they talk a lot about this. And so I thought that was very positive. And then I just wanted to touch on something that I've actually been doing for years, but they have a name for it now. And so now it's the big hot topic, but I didn't call it anything. I just called it a way to save extra money. And a lot of you guys' banks probably have something where you can, like I'm with Wells Fargo, unfortunately. They have my mortgage. It is what it is. And when I use my debit card, they move $1 from my checking account to my savings account. Now, we can talk about exactly why they do that, and it's not as altruistic as it sounds, but we're not going to, because today we're talking about positivity. It's just, it comes with the territory when you understand how everything works. It gets a little more convoluted, but that is an example of micro savings. There's a lot of other banks who maybe round up. So, if your purchase is $25.49, it'll round the rest of the transaction up and move that into a savings account. And these are examples of micro savings. One of the things that I did when I worked for the last firm I worked for, is anytime I ate the food I brought from home, I moved $10 from my checking account to my savings account. Now, of course, it would be $20, but $10 was what I did. So if I successfully, ate my lunch, then I was able to save an extra, maybe $30 a week or something like that. That does build up over time. The one thing that I found when I worked at the firm was that I wasn't trying to go out to eat because I didn't like the food I brought. I was trying to go out to eat because I hated the place and I didn't like the people in it, and I needed to get out and get some a break and get some clarity. And so I started, taking myself to a park or doing something like that. And it was very hard, because this is where behavioral finance comes in, where it's not a matter of, you think the symptom is you go out to eat all the time because you don't want to eat the lunch that you brought. But in reality, the problem is that you hate where you are, and going out to eat is the escape. It's not about the different type of food. If you could go to the restaurant and eat the food you packed, then you would totally do that. But if you can find other ways for your outlet to do something on your lunchtime, and you can start moving over money that you would have spent on dining out into your savings account, that is another example of micro savings. And then lastly, I told you this is going to be a very, very fast episode. And for those of you who are my Finances Other F Word listeners, my podcast episodes are usually around an hour or a little over. And these last two have been very short, but they get the point across. And then I'm going to answer the question, and then I'm actually wrapping up already I need to just take a break and cleanse the palate. And I know you guys do too. There's just a lot of stuff happening, and sometimes we just need to reset. And I almost didn't do a show today because I couldn't do it. I didn't want to research another topic that was going to be negative, that was going to have negative ramifications for people. Whatever, here we are. So one of the things that I've touched on before, but I want to draw this to your attention. Well, actually, before I get to this, I want to mention you guys a browser, which sounds really weird. So there is a browser that I use called Ecosia, and it is actually spelled Ecosia, Ecosia. It's a free browser. It's a normal browser, just like any other browser. However, this browser specifically is trying to make a difference with the environment. And currently right now, they have planted over 237 million trees, and they have raised over 95 million pounds to fight climate action. And it works just like Google. It works just like, Firefox. It works like all of your other browsers. But every time you use it, then the money that's generated from it goes to help fight climate change. And this was a small win that I found because I'm a tree hugger, probably at the beginning of this year. And I was a little worried switching to the browser because I thought it's going to be slower, or it's not going to be as accurate, or I'm not going to find stuff. And I can tell you that ever since I switched to the browser, it's been fantastic. And I've had no issues. Now it is my go-to browser. I stopped using Firefox as much, and I use Ecosia instead. So if, changing your browser is not that big a deal to you, it's Ecosia, Ecosia, and they, when you use their browser, they do fight climate change. So on that tip, as we're talking about that right now, is my audio breaking up? Anything? Can you guys hear me okay right now? I have just so my finances, the other F word listeners can be part of this. I have Metal Destruction dropped a meme of two rabbits having sex. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure how that's relative. Oh, another quickie this week. I got it. Okay, I see what you did there. Yes, so for those of you who just joined me, I was talking at the top of the hour. I'm going to answer a listener question. And I want to encourage you guys that if you have questions for me, you can DM me on Instagram at finances, the other F word, and I will be more than happy to keep you anonymous and answer them on air. I do not, I cannot give you advice, but I can answer your questions, and I would absolutely love to be able to do that for you guys. And I know that the topics I've been covering lately are very heavy and lean toward the negative, and that's not me. That's just this is the times we live in. And so I'm trying to make this a little bit of a lighter episode. And so I'm going to be finishing this very last part. And then I am going to answer the question. And then again, if anyone else has questions for my finances, the other F word listeners, you can always email me at mel@finances, plural finances, the other F word.com. And ask me or DM me through Instagram on finances, the other F word. And I do want to remind you guys that on the third Monday of every month, thanks to Kodak, who is actually in the house today, which I'm happy for, he suggested I buy freebudgetbootcamp.com, and I did. So I'm giving a free budget boot camp where I cover obviously how to budget, but more importantly, I cover how to budget in a financial planning context, not in save 20% a month in savings, which is, in my opinion, is a bunch of bullshit. And if you take the class, you'll understand what I'm saying. But I've made that boot camp completely free. It's the third Monday of every month. You can sign up for it at freebudgetbootcamp.com. You will get the free budget sheet as well as the class. And I talk a lot about behavioral finance, a way that you can feel like, your times aren't so dark, that things aren't so bad, because our money is tied in very highly to our emotions, very highly. And I understand that, tuning into my show over and over again can be very disheartening. And I don't want it to be. I'm not trying to be a pundit. I'm not trying to do that. I want to give you guys as much information, and I appreciate that you keep coming back, even when sometimes the overturn? What am I trying to say? When the overall episodes can be negative, because most shit rolls downhill. So for those of you who are looking, I just talked about the Ecosia browser that is free, that helps plant trees and helps fight climate change. It's a very small action you can do. It doesn't change your daily living at all, and it helps out the environment. One of the other things that you can do for those of you who are looking to invest is that when you are looking for different mutual funds, or maybe if you were looking at options in your 401ks, there are mutual funds that are ESG funds. And so ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And there, some ETFs also have ESG ratings. Their ESG ratings are predominantly heavy in the mutual funds right now, but ETFs are starting to get on board too. And this is a rating scale that screens companies based on how they treat their people, how they treat the planet, how they treat their shareholders, and their financial performance. And so the companies that are high ESG rated, typically when we're talking about the environment, are looking for companies that have low carbon footprints, or they're trying to eliminate their carbon footprints, or they're looking at, renewable energy products, or they have a sustainable supply chain that's not damaging, that's not, destructive to the environment, and is sustainable as far as an environmental standpoint. So social, they practice DEI, right? They practice diversity in their hiring. They do not have child labor. They are concerned about community impact. They work hard on their customer outreach and their community relations, and they practice fair labor practices. And so when you're investing in ETFs or mutual funds, if you take the time to look to see what their ESG rating is, it can help you feel a little bit better about where you're investing your money. Now, I have a lot of clients who don't care about this. And then I have clients who absolutely insist on this. So it's an option for you out there. And when we're talking about, governance, we're talking about leadership with ethics. I'm not going to say anything. Leadership with ethics, transparent accounting, no double books, following the GAAP principles, and legitimately following the GAAP principles and transparency, fair shareholders' rights, and fighting any type of anti-corruption practices. And so we're starting to see the move towards ESG ratings and ESG funds, and we find that from the financial standpoint, that they can drive change through their capital, and you can drive change through your capital because you're the one investing in them. The firms that are ESG rated are typically, they reduce your risk exposure in a financial portfolio because of the simple fact that they are more cognizant of different things that are happening. And there is, as the Gen Z and Gen Alpha come online, we know that the focus and the concern is moving towards more like, hey, what's going on with the environment? And so the expectation is for funds that are ESG certified or ranked will be a positive thing. And so when you have big ESG investors, they can use their voting power to push, because every time you own a share of a company, you have a voting right. And so you can, if you have enough of those, then you can make a difference. And you can help make big changes like fighting climate change and gender pay equity and diversity and encouraging things like that. And so when we talk a lot about all of the stuff that's going on between the 1% and the 99%. I just want you guys to kind of cleanse the palate with me. And for those of you who are just joining me, you missed at the top of the hour, I talked about I am rereading the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And he is a Holocaust survivor, but he's a psychologist before that. And he talks about how he kept his mind right in light of the horrific circumstances that he experienced in both Dachau and Auschwitz. He lost his wife to a gas chamber, I believe, in Auschwitz, and that kind of spurred this conversation. But now I want to answer a quick question for somebody who sent me in a message. And again, I encourage you guys, if you have questions you want me to answer, I cannot give you flat out advice, but you can DM me on Finances the Other F Word at Instagram, or email me at mel@finances the other F Word, and I will absolutely answer your question. And I asked, if I could cover this on my Finances the Other F Word episode, and I was given permission, so that's why we're getting the answer out today. So the question was, the person had said that they have a situation where they're looking at needing to decide if they should take out a home equity loan to pay for some needed expenses that are coming up, or if they should do a loan from their 401k. And now this might be something that a lot of people are going to face, or are facing, or could face in the future. And so this is a fantastic question all the way across the board. And I want to address it because it might help some other people in the future. The first thing that, when we talk about loans from 401k, the first thing that I want to bring your attention to is that the 401k has to have the provision. Not all 401ks have a loan provision. And some of them with the loan provisions, they might have certain circumstances that they will allow you to take the loan out. And if you have to qualify for those certain circumstances before they will give you the loan. And if you get the loan from the 401k, what happens is that, and this is why you're employed. Okay, so for any orphaned 401ks that are left at another employer, you cannot take loans from those. Okay, you can only take loans from 401ks that you are actively contributing to. Now, let's say if you take out, $50,000, I'm just throwing that out there, from your 401k, assuming they have the loan provision, assuming that you're going to meet all of the criteria for them, then you get the $50,000 and then you start on a payment plan. Most 401ks, if they have a loan provision, will allow you typically, this is not a guarantee, but will allow you typically 1 to 3 loans outstanding. So you can, take a loan out and then you can take another loan out. Now you're still paying them all back at the same time, but you can have like up to 3 loans going at one time. In the financial realm, there is people who hardline and say that you always want to take money as a loan from your 401k before anything else because you're always paying yourself back first. And that's what you want to do. And that's why it's your best option forever and ever. Amen. And, anytime somebody speaks in finites, I call bullshit immediately just because of that. But that is a relatively good point. Now, what happens is for someone who's contributing to an existing 401k who has a loan out, then they will have their normal contribution removed, but then they will also have their payment as well. And so what will happen is that going forward, their checks will be less as they're paying back the loan. And as a result of that, and some of them have, the max amount they'll let you withdraw. Maybe it's a percentage of your overall 401k. So I'm just using $50,000 just to give us a jumping off point. Now that $50,000 comes to you as a loan from your 401k, and as you're paying it back, your 401k, what ends up happening is that your checks are going to be decreased until you have paid off successfully your 401k loan, and then your checks go back to normal and you just have your contribution amount coming out. If in the event that you have an existing loan out on your 401k and you quit or get fired from your job, then that is considered a taxable event. So whatever amount of money, in my previous example I just used, if you had taken a loan out from your 401k of $50,000 and you only got $10,000 of it paid back, then the IRS says, well, you just got a $40,000 raise because that money is now considered taxes to you. And at that time, I'm not a CPA, but I believe that that $40,000 is also subject to all penalties as if you had done a straight, a straight up withdrawal from the 401k versus doing a loan from the 401k. So it's something you want to remember. If you're getting ready to maybe quit your job in the next couple months, or you just can't stay in the place and you're just praying anything else comes along, maybe taking a loan from your 401k is not going to be the best option currently at the time, because inevitably you will end up paying back that money, plus you will lose the tax shelter, and you will end up having a taxable event and paying penalties. So that would be my first word of caution for you there. When you're looking at an orphan 401k and the potential of taking money, and like you're in a pinch, you need money, you're weighing your options, and you have this orphan 401k that's hanging out at an old employer, okay? You have two options that you can, well, you technically have three options you can do with that 401k. You can do nothing, which is always an option. Eventually, the 401k will tell you get out, but they'll keep holding on to your money for a while. And so you can do nothing and leave it there. Nothing's happening with it. Whatever investments that you had picked when you left that employer is going to still be the same investments. You're not going to be able to go in and change your investments because it's not an active 401k anymore. Okay. So whatever you were in, that's what you're in. Or option number two is you can take that 401k and you can roll it into a traditional IRA. But remember that 401k contribution limits are higher than traditional IRA contribution limits. However, typically when you roll your 401k and orphan 401k, because if you're employed still and you have a 401k and you're still employed, typically you can't roll it out unless you're over a certain age, and it has to be a provision in the documents, in the TPA documents of the 401k. So the thing is that when you, and I just lost my train of thought because I started thinking about the documents. So you can roll it over, you can roll your orphan 401k into an IRA. Once you do that, your investment options typically open up for your IRA. So basically what happens is you have way more things that you can invest money into. So that's an option. Or what you can do is you can take that orphan 401k and you can roll it into the existing 401k. And if that existing 401k that you have at your employer has the ability to take a loan provision, then let's say you had, $100,000 in this 401k, and thank you, Beyond the Bar. Yes, summary plan document. Thank you. I was like, no, the TPA, that's not the document. That's the people. So see, I got smart ass listeners. I love that shit. It's amazing. So if you take your old 401k, your orphan 401k, and you roll it into your existing 401k at your current employer, what you then have is you have the ability to then loan from that total amount if you're going to need a significant amount of money. Now, typically, if you're going to take a loan out on your 401k, again, you want to make sure that you're still going to be staying at your employer, because if not, it's going to become a taxable event. You might as well just do a withdrawal. Number two, you just want to see what the rate is. You want to make sure that the loan repayment on the 401k is going to be less than whatever your other option is. So in the question that was posed to me, it was like, hey, there's some expenses that have came up. Should I look at doing a home equity loan, or should I look at doing a loan for my 401k? And so my question would be to you is that depending on what happens with the Fed, all right, we know that interest rates are not high, but they're not low right now. And we do know that the Trump administration is pushing to replace and will no doubt fire Powell. I 100% believe that before his term ends in May, and replace him with a loyalist, which means that they will immediately lower interest rates, because when you lower interest rates, it props up the economy, and it makes the tariffs look like they didn't really affect the economy as bad as they actually did. And so what happens is that when you're looking at doing any type of home equity product, you have two options. You have a line and you have a loan. Okay, so a line is like a credit card. Your interest rate is going to fluctuate. As you pull money from it and pay it back, it becomes available again. So if you have a $500 limit on your credit card, you use $300 of it, and then you pay $300 of it back, your limit is now, instead of $200 to spend, you now have the $500 to spend. That's called revolving credit. That is what a credit card is. That is what a credit line is. And so if you're looking at home equities, you can do home equity lines and you can do home equity loans. And there's two ways of things you should evaluate when you're looking at your options of, hey, what is the best thing I should do to fix my situation I'm in now? If you are in a time of higher loans, okay, I got a question. I'm gonna address your question, Kodak. I just want to make sure that I finish this train of thought, but I will address that because that's a very good question. So if you're in a time of higher interest rates and you lock yourself into a loan, you need to know that that is your interest rate, right? Even if interest rates start going down, the Fed starts lowering interest rates, that loan is that loan. And so typically what we see is when interest rates are very low, this is why we saw a lot of mortgages. We see a lot of people moving towards locking their interest, locking their loan, because even as interest rates go up, their loan is going to stay the same, all right? However, once you get a loan, that's it. It doesn't start revolving again. Like once you pay off the loan, you're done. It used to be that you could write off the interest that accrued on home equity products, whether they were lines or whether they were loans. However, since the 2017 Trump tax cuts to the 1% have been made permanent, those have been the standard deduction has went up. They've gotten rid of all of the interest in that. Also, one of the things I would tell you is that if you're looking at doing a home equity of any kind, you want to know how much equity you're using in the home. So what I mean by that is there is I can't remember the ratio now, but it'll come to me, where it's a loan. There you go. It's loan to value. So they might say, okay, we will lend you, if it's a primary resident as the bank, we will lend you 40% loan to value. So if you have, $100,000 equity in your home, they will lend you a max of $40,000. A lot of times it's 80% loan to value. But what happens is that if that house gets sold before that loan is paid off, then you are now in third position to get your money from the sale of that home. So your mortgager is going to get paid first, and then whoever has the second on your home, because a home equity is a second mortgage. That's what it is. A home equity line or loan is a second mortgage. They're in second position. And then what happens is that if you needed to sell the house, everybody before you would get paid, and then you would get whatever is left over. So you need to take that into consideration as well. Home equity lines of credit are nice because they're revolving, and if interest rates drop, you get the benefit of that and your payment can go down. The problem is if interest rates go up, you're still stuck paying it, right? So those are the things that I would consider. And when we're looking at cash flow, your ultimate decision, I feel, always comes down to cash flow, because if you take my free budget boot camp, which again, I'm doing this coming Monday on the 18th, is August free budget boot camp, freebudgetbootcamp.com. Thanks, Kodak, for the suggestion. Sign up, take my free budget boot camp. You get a budget sheet. I talk about behavioral financing, how to set up a budget without the shame, without feeling like you're behind, and really getting a hold of where your money is going. No shame, no judgment, no bullshit, just legit how to budget. And if you're interested, freebudgetbootcamp.com, sign up. I do one every single month on the third Monday of the month. But the biggest thing that the decision is ultimately going to come down to, in my opinion, is your cash flow. Because your cash flow, if you take the boot camp, you'll understand this. Your cash flow is the key to unlocking anything you were trying to do, period. Okay, you can give me the prettiest financial objectives in the world, but if you do not have the cash flow, then you're not going to achieve them. So protecting your cash flow is of the utmost importance always. And so if you're looking at taking out a loan from your 401k and you know you're going to be at the employer for a long time, okay, so you're not going to worry about it, you know, you don't think your job's in jeopardy, you don't have to worry about it becoming a taxable implication, and let's say that it's going to cost you an extra $400 a month, okay? And then what happens is that if you were to take out whatever loan, what other option, your home equity line or loan that you had, and it was going to cost you $500 a month in payback, well, then that's a pretty easy answer right there, because overall you're going to be able to come out ahead by $100 in positive cash flow if you take a loan, if the provision is there, out on the 401k versus taking it out of your actual money. And, you know, like I said, there's tax people that will argue with me that you always take the 401k option first. I just don't believe in absolutes. And so that would be the conversation that I would have with myself or with my significant other, is exactly what is the repayment schedule? Are we going to get screwed? Is this a better interest rate than what we can lock in on this home equity loan right now? Or if we did a home equity line, what is our wiggle room in our payment? So if we take out, you know, 30 grand of this home equity line and shit gets real, then what happens is how much wiggle room do we have? Because the thing is that a second mortgage can foreclose on you. So it's a little challenging, because if you're still paying your first mortgage, but your second mortgage you're not paying on your second mortgage, they can start foreclosure proceedings. So when we're talking about doing any type of home equity products on your home, we want to make sure that it is absolutely what we want to do, because as I've said so many times, typically what we find in estates of the 99% is that the house, the primary residence, is the biggest wealth builder for generational wealth. And then after that is the 401k or any retirement accounts. But as we live longer, what happens is that by normal financial planning and hitting our distribution phase, we end up taking cash from our investments as we age. So that means that if your drive is to make sure that your kids have money in the event that you pass away, and you know one of your biggest assets is your 401k or your IRA, you need to know that you're going to be depleting that as you age. That's just going to happen, which means that your primary residence becomes even more important in the conversation that I'm having with you right now. So let me get to the questions right now. So what if a home equity is offered from your current lender at the same percentage as your choosing interest rate from a few years ago? Okay, so the way I'm reading that question is, and then for those of you who are just joining me, I'm answering a listener's question, and now I have additional questions on this, which is good. So when I'm reading this statement, what if a home equity is offered from your current lender at the same percentage as your closing interest rate from a few years ago? Well, my first question would be, what is that rate, right? Is that a low interest rate? And also, it sounds to me, if it's offered at the same percentage, that doesn't sound to me like a second. That sounds to me more like a cash out refi. So there's two different things. And I appreciate most of you guys for still hanging out with me, because I know this stuff can be really boring, but this is the information that you need. And this is the information that I would love to share more of with you guys. I just don't know the jumping off point. So questions are so wonderful. A home equity, there's all kinds of different products out there, right? So basically what you can do is you can do one of two things, okay? You can do a second mortgage, which is a home equity line or loan, which is a true home equity line or loan, okay? And that is a second position on your house, which means that your first mortgager gets paid first, then the second mortgager gets paid, then you get whatever left over if in the event that the house is sold. Okay. And so that is a true second mortgage. It is a separate loan. It comes in second position. Even if, like, Wells Fargo is your primary mortgager and you do a second with Wells Fargo, that Wells Fargo is still on the deed twice. They're just in two separate positions. Now, if it's the same interest rate, because if you're saying, if the question is for a few years ago, well, interest rates have changed, right? We know that. So depending on how long ago a few years ago was, whether it was 5 years ago or whatever years ago it was, the chances that your interest rate has changed from there to here is very probable. Okay. So if they're offering you the same interest rate, then the thing is they might be offering you a cash out refi. Now, what a cash out refi is not a second. It is not a second on your home. It is not a home equity line or loan. They might call it that because people understand somewhat what that means, but a cash out refi means that, you owe, $250,000 on your mortgage. Your houses went up in value, so they're going to do a cash out refi where they're going to refinance your house and give you 50 grand, and now your mortgage goes from 250 to 300,000, and now it starts the 30-year amortization schedule all over again. Now that is an option as well. If they are willing to meet the same interest rate you had prior. Now, if your interest rate was higher before, and the interest rates are higher now, and then there's no love lost, great. The only thing you are losing in this example of a cash out refi would be closing costs again, because you're doing a brand new mortgage. So all of the little bit of principal you've paid down over the years is now washed. You get cash in your pocket, and now your mortgage, instead of $250,000, is $300,000 with a 30-year amortization schedule again. I'll explain that here in a moment. And then you make your payments, and now you start over like you just bought the house. For those of you not familiar with the term amortization schedule, in the example I just used of a home, okay, 30-year mortgage, what happens is that I'm just going to throw these numbers out. Okay. Let's say your payment's $2,000 a month. Okay. The first 1 to 15 years, you might find that your $2,000 a month payment, maybe $1,800 of that is going to interest and $200 of that is going to principal to actually pay down the initial money that you borrowed. Okay. Usually after about the 15th, 16th, 17th year mark, depending on the interest rate that you have, they start to flip. And eventually what you get to is towards the very end payments, your $2,000 payment, $1,800 of it is going to principal and $200 of it is going to interest. There's a couple reasons why they do that. They do that, first of all, because the bank wants all their money up front. So they're going to upload any loan, car loans are the same way, with their interest. Because if you decide to sell the home in 5 years, or you decide to sell the home in 10 years, or you decide to sell the home in 15 years, right? They want to make sure that they've gotten as much interest out of you as possible. I'm not talking shit. I'm being real. That's what they're trying to do. Then, which means that for the first half of the mortgage, you're not really touching your principal balance at all. So if you're going to do a cash out refi or even a second on the home, you want to make sure that you're going to have the home long enough to be able to pay that off, or at least get it down to a very low minimum in the event that you do decide to sell the home. So one more thing, and then I think I have I think I've covered this question. This question was posed to me through social media, and hopefully I've done a good job. Let's see. Would taking a part of the money from the orphan 401k's income be considered a neutral option instead of borrowing from it? Well, the orphan 401k doesn't have the option to borrow. So if you wanted to borrow, because the orphan 401k is dead, right? You're not an employee anymore. You don't get any of those liberties, because the whole point of taking a loan out on the 401k is the fact that you are going to be repaying it every paycheck. But if you have a orphan 401k from a previous employer, you're not contributing anymore to that 401k. So there is no borrowing. You're just going to withdraw from it and pay all applicable taxes, which is going to be 10% penalties, plus it's going to look, if it's a true 401k, traditional 401k, whatever amount you take a loan out for, that's going to increase your taxable implication. So if you make $60,000 a year and you take out a $40,000 withdrawal from your 401k, congratulations. In the eyes of the IRS, you have just made $100,000, which could bump you to a higher tax bracket or could not, depending on how your other income comes in. If you wanted to have the option to loan from that orphan 401k, and the existing employer's 401k allowed you to have the provision to take a loan, you would need to take that old 401k and roll it into the existing 401k that you're actively contributing to, and then it would fall under the parameters of whatever provisions were in that plan. So the only time you're loaning is from a 401k that you're currently contributing to. Very important distinction, because anything you do with the orphan 401k besides rolling it over to an existing 401k or rolling it over to an IRA is a cash out. And all fees are going to be due. And just so you guys are aware, typically, as practice, standard in my industry, if you have an orphan 401k that you do decide you're going to withdraw, that you're just going to say, fuck it, I'm taking all of it because whatever need is over here is going to be more important, they will withhold 20% taxes automatically, period. So even if your cumulative tax rate is less than 20%, doesn't matter. They're going to withhold 20%. That's what's going to happen. So whatever's coming out of that orphan 401k is going to be automatically less 20%, and you're going to get that cash. And then the hope is that you're not going to have to pay even more money at the end of the year and taxable implication. Does that make sense, you guys? I know that was a lot. I've had a lot of good comments here, and a lot of good feedback. And I would encourage you guys, again, I'm wrapping up. This is a very short episode. I had a listener question and got permission to share it on Finances, the Other F Word. And so I did. And I appreciate, you guys popping in. And I know my show, I feel like I owe you guys an apology. I know my show is a lot of times negative leaning, not by choice, not by me. That's just the times that we live in. And unfortunately, we need to be informed about negative things. And so I hope that this was a little palate cleanser for you guys. And I highly encourage you, any of you who have questions along the lines that this listener sent in, please feel free to social media. Send me a DM on Instagram, Finances, the Other F Word. Again, cannot give you investment advice, but I can help you walk through a situation with my knowledge and share it with you. Absolutely would love to do that, very much so. And freebudgetbootcamp.com, you guys. No shame, no judgment, no guilt. You don't have to have your camera on. Just talking about how to budget and how to understand where your money is going so that you can start feeling more in control. Because as scary as it may seem to figure out where your money is going, once you do, it is so empowering. And in any financial plan I do, budgeting is the first brick. Every time. I don't care if you have millions of dollars or no dollars. You start with the budget. And I teach budgeting in the context of the financial plan, not budgeting as, these bullshit general rules of thumb that everybody wants to throw out on social media. None of that shit. Real shit. Like, life is going to fucking suck, and this is how you deal with it, and this is how you do it in a way that doesn't make you spiral, doesn't make you feel like you're losing control. For people whose income fluctuates constantly like mine, I address that and everything. So, third Monday of every month, my next boot camp is coming up August 18th. You get the free budget sheet with it, and then we have a Zoom meeting. I just recently made these free all of the time. So I would encourage you, if you need help and you feel overwhelmed, start there. It's free, like for real. Like it's free. Okay, freebudgetbootcamp.com. And with that, I appreciate all you guys hanging out with me. Any other financial questions any of you might have, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to answer them for you and help you specifically. I appreciate you guys. I really do. I really do. And I hope you guys have a great week and a good morning. And for those of you who haven't, read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I think it will help you Is it Vincent or Victor? No, it's Victor. Victor E. Frankl. I think it will help you try to find the silver lining in times that are just seemingly increasingly more dark. So, with that, Station Head and Finance is the Other F Word listeners, I appreciate you, and I am out. This bitch.
Thanks for listening. Please like, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.